February 11th, a meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. The first item on our agenda is the meeting minutes from January 28th, 2014. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those?
Move to accept.
A motion?
Approve.
Right. So Commissioner Neely is absent this evening, and which alternate is it? Jack, Commissioner Coleman. Okay. Very good. Commissioner Coleman, you are on
All right.
for the meeting minutes.
Noted.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson. Have a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Alessi. Does anyone have any comments or discussion on the meeting minutes? No. All right. And for the record, Commissioner Alessi and myself were absent from the January 28th meeting, but both of us have listened to the tapes, as it were, now on demand on Fair TV, which is nice. And so we're fully engaged for the all voting this evening. Okay. Any amendments, corrections? No? All right. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Meeting minutes are approved unanimously. Next item on our agenda is 2500 Hillside Road, request of Attorney Fitzpatrick for a 90-day extension for filing the final subdivision map. This is the first extension.
That's correct. This was a two-lot subdivision approved on November 12th of last year. This will be the first of two possible 90 days.
Can I have a motion? Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Calabrese. Any discussion? No. Call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is 600 Hoydens Lane. Another request of Attorney Fitzpatrick for a 90-day extension of filing of final subdivision map. Also first extension.
That's correct. This is also a two-lot subdivision approved on December 10th. And just like the matter before, the first of two possible 90-day extensions.
All right. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Any second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jacobson. Any discussion on the item? Seems pretty routine. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. We have two items on our agenda to recommend a public hearing. First is 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University for additions and alterations to an existing athletic building in conjunction with previously approved athletic field and stadium improvements in a AA zone.
Yes, hopefully you'll move this to hearing because we're scheduled to hear this evening. So this is a follow-up to an application that was approved by this commission in 2012 for some stadium improvements, and you will hear a more elaborate presentation this evening.
Very good. And so just for the record, the public hearing was noticed for this evening as well.
It is a little bit unusual. We had originally we had an application that we were going to hear at our second meeting this month that was, their crew wasn't available for tonight, so they wanted to get pushed to the second meeting, so that's why this hearing is tonight. So we did get jammed up for March. It is we heard this once before. The university did do some outreach to their direct neighbors. We did a direct mailing to the neighbors within 200 feet. So even though you are recommending it to hearing tonight, it was fully noticed with direct mailing to adjacent property owners.
Okay. So everybody's clear. The motion is to move it to public hearing, and the public hearing is scheduled for tonight. It's been noticed. Notice is mailed directly to the adjacent property owners. Any discussion on the item? Oh, no, sorry, we need a motion. Motion to move to public hearing tonight by Commissioner Alessi. Any second?
I'll second.
Second?
Second.
Second, good, all right. Any discussion on the item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next item is 256 Spruce Street, the application of David Quattrella, trustee, to amend the zoning map to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned Residence B and a zoning compliance application to expand off-street parking.
This is in Southport on the Post Road. There's People's Bank, and adjacent to People's Bank, there's a Dunkin' Donuts and Subway. Adjacent to that, there's a strip center on the corner of Spruce Street. So the corner strip center and the Dunkin' Donuts building are owned by similar entities. They have a contract to acquire a residential, fairly dilapidated, basically a condemned residential piece to the rear. Abutting those properties are looking to demolish that house and create some additional parking for those two buildings. So that would be the subject of this particular application.
All right. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to move the public hearing.
Motion to move by Commissioner Calabrese, second by Commissioner Alessi. Any discussion on this item? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next section on our agenda is old business. We have two items. First is 1275 Post Road, special permit application of Brick Walk Associates LLC for a second floor addition for residential units in a center design district. Public hearing was held January 28, 2014, and it expires April 13, 2014. Present were Barrett's, Calabrese, Jacobson, Kennelly, Coleman, Corcoran, and Francis. I'm sorry.
Don't sweat, man.
No.
We're all struggling tonight.
It's something about the spelling. It
No,
just-
it's just like, I think we're all just under the weather.
Yeah,
Some of them,
yeah.
too.
So, Commissioners Alessi and Wagner were not present, but we have reviewed the video and are prepared for this item.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go over briefly, outline for you what was presented at the public hearing. The subject property, as you have notified, is located at 1275 Post Road in the Center Design Business District. The property is part of the Brick Walk complex, which comprising of parcels located on 1127 through 1305 Post Road. The proposal made in this application is to add a second floor over the existing Citibank branch building. The new second floor will be used for purposes to establish 3 residential units. The total area of those units would be 3,127 square feet. As has been in the case with previous proposals, the applicant seeks to add additional residential units to complement the retail, office, and restaurant uses in the Brick Walk. And that kind of mixed use is outlined and permitted subject to securing permits in our Center Design Business District. This residential use must be consistent with those regulations, in particular provisions of section 12.3.16 of the zoning regulations. These provisions are that the units cannot be located on the ground floor and that the total area of these units cannot exceed more than 50% of the total floor area of the building. The total building after the addition would be 6,703 square feet. As I mentioned before, 3,127 square feet, which would be 47%, would be the total size of the residential portion. Also in that section, each dwelling unit must have a minimum floor area of 750 square feet, and as represented in the application and site plan that was submitted, these 3 apartments would have an average size of 957 square feet. There are parking requirements, as with any use, that are subject to our section 28.6.1. Provisions for 6 parking spaces were shown and accommodated on the site plan for these 3 dwelling units. In this section, 28.6.1, it does state that residential parking requirements in a commercial district may, at the commission's discretion, be reduced by up to 50%. The applicant is asking that this requirement for the proposal be reduced to the 3 spaces, and that would be consistent with parking compliance as has been calculated with respect to other dwelling units within the brick walk complex. Again, they did represent or show on the site plan the additional space, but they are requesting the 50% reduction so that the additional construction of those spaces would not be necessary. Now, Mr. Chairman, is the outlines what was presented to the public hearing.
Thank you. Are there any specific findings that we need to make in order to grant the parking reduction?
Other than finding that it's as they explained in their traffic report, that there is space available and that it's convenient and safe to the residential units, which they showed which parking spaces were located, so we think it's convenient and safe for the patrons, and also that they would not create an undue, not having those additional 3 spaces, you're convinced, based on their presentation, that it would not create undue traffic conditions in the site complete. So that's essentially the findings you make that reduction.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Barrett's moves to approve, and a second by Commissioner Kennelly. Would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start. I speak in favor of this application. I find that some of these additions, the second floor mixed-use development in the downtown area has really been a positive development for our Center Design Business District, and I believe this one is architecturally, it will harmonize with the existing building and the surrounding area. I think it's great. I think when people look at our downtown and see that we do have, some residential over commercial, I think that's really viewed as a positive thing downtown, and I'm definitely in favor of this one. I think 3 units is fine. I'd also be inclined to grant the parking reduction. It's a reduction. It's rated in our regulations that we can reduce it in that particular district, and it looks over the plans like we've done it on other residential units. I counted off there a few of them within the brick walk. So I don't really have any conditions or anything to apply, and I'd be inclined to support this application.
Commissioner Kennelly?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Commissioner Barrett's. This kind of mixed-use development adds life and adds a valuable component to downtown development. The Jonathan Franzen design is attractive and not looming. I agree also with Commissioner Barrett's that in this case, just as I believe in a previous case it was cited, the 50% reduction is reasonable. So for those reasons, I support this application.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Calabrese?
I'm thrilled to be supporting this project at 1275 Post Road. The fact that this project is going to add residential housing down to our downtown area is just fantastic. Mr. Franzen's design is absolutely beautiful. It's going to harmonize with the neighborhood down there, with the other buildings that are already existing. So I absolutely will support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson?
I agree. I think the building is very much in harmony with the area. I think there is a need for housing in the center of the town. I think we have a great center of the town. The architecture is phenomenal, and I will support this.
Excellent. I agree. I think this is an excellent application. It fits squarely within our regulations. It is what we envisioned, years ago when we encouraged this kind of growth. The mixed use downtown is seen as a tremendous positive. And I also agree that the parking reduction is in keeping with the overall use. It will be convenient, safe. There is plenty of, other parking adjacent, and I don't think it will create undue traffic issues. For a 50% reduction, one parking space for each unit. Each unit is average less than 1,000 square feet, so I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. Any other comments? No? Okay. Are we ready to vote? All right. So the motion is to approve the application, so vote in favor is for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. The application is approved. Next item on old business is 1280 Stratfield Road. Special exception application of Child's World Academy to establish a day nursery in an existing building. This is in the Neighborhood Design District. Public hearing on January 28, 2014. Expires April 3rd, 2014. Present at the meeting were Barrett's, Carol Breeze, Jacobson, Kennelly, Coleman, Corcoran, and Francis. And Commissioners Alessi and Wagner were absent but listened to the tapes and are ready to vote on this item.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I will outline what was presented to the commission at the hearing. The Child's World Academy makes this application for approval to establish a child care learning center at the property at 1280 Stratfield Road. The use as proposed is permitted in our neighborhood design business district pursuant to under section 12.5.17.1, again, subject to securing a special exception approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission under our section 27 regulations. Child World Academy operates and manages child care learning centers for children aged 6 weeks to 12 years of age. The children 6 weeks to 5 years are generally cared for either on a part-time or full-time basis. Children ages 5 and older use the facility at Child World Academy for before and after school care. In addition, it was described for the commission at the hearing that the Child World Academy would generally conduct, in some instances, summer camp programs for school-aged children. The general hours of operation would be between 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. weekdays, with special programs being conducted on weekends, generally between the hours of 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. The proposed daycare center will be located in the former supermarket building for the Stratfield Market IGA at the intersection of Stratfield Road, which is Route 59, and Fairfield Woods Road. The daycare center will provide a total floor area space of 9,700 square feet. It will have 25 employees and an enrollment of basically 150 children. It was noted that at a typical day, 60 to 70% of the enrollment children actually would attend the daycare center based on their similar facilities located in the state. In addition, based on the experience in their other sites, not all employees work at the same time when the facility is open. The existing building will be renovated in its entirety, maintaining the existing footprint. The existing parking lots on both the north and south sides will be completed and reconstructed, with the north parking lot also being slightly expanded. The northeastern portion of the property will include an outdoor play area, surfaced with pervious synthetic turf. The pervious pavers will also be used in the south parking lot at the front of the building drop-off and pickup area. That's identified on their site plan. The plan incorporates, as part of their drainage report, 2 rain gardens to improve stormwater infiltration, along with an area of pervious pavers, as I mentioned, at the building entrance. The features are intended not only, they had stressed, to serve for improving stormwater quality, but they felt it could be used as part of the education program for students and visitors. Additionally, the outdoor play space is highly permeable, as I mentioned, contributing to the reduction based on their drainage report, stormwater volumes leaving the site. Also, as consistent with our regulations, shade trees are planted to assist in minimizing the heat effect on the pavement around the site facilities. As far as the traffic report, the new site layout for the daycare center proposes to eliminate any existing site line deficiencies at the northerly driveway on Stratfield Road by converting it into an entrance-only driveway. Similarly, the other driveway on Stratfield Road would also be turned into an entry-only driveway. Then the other driveway on Fairfield Woods Road provides unrestricted sight lines toward Churchill Road, the T intersection there to the east, and over 500 sight distance along Fairfield Woods Road to the west. These, as reported in their hearing, these meet the CONDAT sight distance criteria. For the driveway on New Street, the CONDAT criteria is 280 feet of distance. This can be achieved, they mentioned, as part of their landscaping plan, after a number of low branches on an oak tree, which will be preserved, as is proposed to be preserved in their landscaping plan toward the north of the driveway, and are trimmed, and bushes blocking the sight line looking north along New Street pruned and removed. All these branches and bushes are located either in the right-of-way or on the daycare center site, so needless to say, they're supposed to be maintained. As is tradition with us and permitted by our regulations, a bond for this work should be required. And the bond would not be released until the work that has been outlined to help with the sight line would be performed. Essentially, the findings the commission needs to review is one, whether or not it's permitted use, and as I mentioned, section 12.517.1 permits day nurseries. There is a definition for day nurseries in our definition section, and if you look at the presentation, there was an overall report that was given about the day facility that's proposed, and represented to the commission that it was consistent with day nursery definition. And secondly, as part of our section 27, it's subject to section 27.4, which is essentially the conditions of approval that the commission needs to find consistent when approving and reviewing an application like that. And I'll highlight the ones that are most important. Sections 27.4.1 states that the location, type, character, and size of the use of buildings and structures shall be in harmony with and conform to the appropriate orderly development of the town and the neighborhood, and not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent properties or impair any value. Also, that the nature and location of the use in buildings or structures shall be such that they will have adequate access for fire protection. That was represented in their presentation and outlined in their site plan. And that with respect to day nurseries, the use shall be situated, located, or developed so as to create no nuisance, nor have a detrimental effect on privacy, tranquility, or value of surrounding properties. Again, that was discussed at the hearing as part of their presentation and overview of their use. And also, part of section 27, the special exception that would be issued for this application shall be limited to group programs for children, which this one is, and for a period not more than 5 years. These uses, once they are approved, are required to be recertified in a 5-year period. Essentially, the reason for that, and the intent in our regulation, is that if, for instance, there were some issues that came up during those 5 years, the commission, during their review for recertification, could consider those issues. That, Mr. Chairman, was essentially what was presented at the public hearing.
Thank you for that comprehensive summary.
Can I do it first? On the motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly.
I'll second.
And a second by Commissioner Alessi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could begin,
Sure.
Thank you. I would describe myself as of two minds regarding this application. On the one hand, I have concerns regarding traffic. In his testimony, Mr. Waugh, the traffic expert who was provided by the applicant, acknowledged that we're probably looking at 18 to 20 seconds worth of delay at the signalized intersection which is already a mess during the peak hour. Additionally, I have concerns about the left-hand turn lane through a double yellow line that southbound on Route 59 Stratfield Road, parents and guardians would have to make that left turn to get into the entrance for the facility, for that entrance-only operation to work. I'm concerned about parking on site, whether it really is sufficient for this particular location. So those are issues I have regarding traffic congestion, and an application like this should not produce undue traffic congestion. Then broader concerns are, this is in a neighborhood design business district, and those types of businesses are meant, businesses in the neighborhood design business district are meant to serve the immediate neighborhood. And Child World Academy, which seems to serve the population it has in its other facilities well. In the testimony we heard, currently the make of the school that this location would replace has about 25% of its student body, I believe, from the town of Fairfield, not say the neighborhood of Stratfield, but the town of Fairfield, and the remaining 75 to 70% from, I guess, Trumbull, Bridgeport, other communities in the area, and one would assume that the former Trumbull locations folks would be here at the new location on Stratfield Road. So that is a concern, because I am somewhat concerned about setting a precedent in past applications where we saw that an applicant had come to a neighborhood design business district and that their real intent was to set up what amounted to some sort of commercial enterprise or professional enterprise that really served a much larger audience than the neighborhood. That can be a concern, because as we go forward, the concept behind neighborhood design business district came out of the fight over originally what would happen with the successor applications to the former Stratfield market, the IGA. So I worry in approving something like this, because folks are just fatigued over having had an empty building for 7.5 years sitting there, and I'm fatigued. I run past it all the time when I'm in shape, and live right in the neighborhood. But by being fatigued and sort of throwing up our hands, are we in the future sort of arming other applicants to come before us and say, well, approve this that will serve in the neighborhood design business district that's supposed to be mom and pop stores, where you get your dry cleaning in the neighborhood design business district, where you get your Chinese right in the neighborhood, where you get maybe stop to do those things that you serve locally. That is to be less intense. It's not meant to be a place, say, for a McDonald's, where people come from all over to go to McDonald's. It's meant to be local. That all said, on the other hand, I look at this and say, well, this is a child care use, which makes me think to some extent it tempers the traffic. And by that I mean, I find I deliver my son to Stratfield School every day, that I notice how incredibly careful my fellow parents are in that neighborhood. Even the drivers who are on their way to commuting, for the most part, seem cognizant. I mean, I see a slower, more careful proceedings, for the most part, in that area, that people seem to understand children are present. So maybe that, to some extent, would ameliorate what is likely to be a more difficult traffic situation. The left-hand turn, for example, signal, when you go northbound, trying to then go on Stratfield Road, trying to go westbound up the hill towards past the mobile station and up Fairfield Woods, is already brutal. I mean, you can wait through multiple stops on that. But on the other hand, perhaps the fact that it will be parents dropping kids and children out and about, and even infants in arms, maybe that will make a difference. So I'm very torn, and I lean toward approval simply because I know that the abutting neighbors are desperately unhappy with continuing with this empty building there after 7.5 years. But I do worry about the traffic, and I do worry about the precedent we set by essentially inviting a regional daycare center that will serve 3/4 of the population that's out of the town into a neighborhood design business district. Because if I say yes to this, why could another applicant come back and say, why can't I have a regional medical practice or something in a neighborhood design business district, the very thing maybe I rejected a year ago in another site. So those are my thoughts, and I'm interested to hear what the fellow commissioners have to say regarding these issues.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cannell. Mr. Coleman?
I support the application. The neighbors are thrilled to have a potential blight removed. I understand very well what Commissioner Kennelly is saying about traffic there, but it sounds like traffic is going to be horrendous at that intersection no matter what use to which that property is put. I think the fact that they have staggered arrival times is probably the best we can hope for, so at least it's not happening all at once. It sounds like the traffic situation there needs to be addressed with the state independently of who occupies the property. As to it bringing in people from other neighborhoods, the very nature of childcare is it only lasts a few years. The kids get too big and they move on to school. And I think that there's a high probability that at least some of the Trumbull people will say, too far to drive, I'm going to make other arrangements, and therefore Fairfield people will take their place. And I would think that within a few years, you'll see it's 75% Fairfield, 25% elsewhere. And as a former working mother, I can't tell you how desperate one is for childcare. My vacation used to start the day my caregiver quit, you know, and having something reliable, someplace reliable where you can put your children is the difference between working and not working sometimes. So I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Alessi?
I heard about this project quite a while back when it was an introduction to the town, to the community at First Presbyterian Church, and the response to it then was pretty welcoming by the neighborhood. And you know, I've lived in Stratfield for 14 years, and I remember when it was a market, and a lot of years when it wasn't a market, and it was a disaster to the community and neighborhood over there like it is sitting there today. And when it was a market, you know, there was no traffic pattern then. You remember? I mean, people park right in front, they come in this side, they come out that side, they come around the back. I mean, it was just a free-for-all when it was a market. So, yeah, I remember when we did the Stop and Shop gas station, and people complained and said, you know, traffic. Well, it was a mobile station before, for a lot of years. And you know, it was a gas station before, and we had a thriving business there before. And I can understand your concern with the left-hand turn from Stratfield into the place. If I'm not mistaken, we have a left-hand turn into the bank now. People make a left-hand turn into the bagel store when heading down south, down Stratfield, right? Into that little parking area. Heading north, or make a left in the bank, a left into the condo complex. So there's a bunch of left-hand turns over double yellow lines now. Into the gas station, headed north on Stratfield Road.
You're not selling me, but okay.
I'm not selling you, okay. But you know, I understand the traffic situation where everybody says, and I know we had someone from the public talking, and you know, it struck me what he said. He said, I take my kids to school every morning, and you know, the congestion at Stratfield School. And I listen, I'm guilty of it. My wife is guilty of this. I'm not guilty of this, but my wife is guilty of this. For 8 years, we dropped our kids off at Stratfield School who were walkers. We drove. And a lot of parents in Stratfield drive their kids who are walkers to Stratfield School. And that really adds to the traffic unnecessarily. Slippery downhill. Yeah, I understand it's slippery downhill.
I'm kidding you.
No, but, you know, there's a reason why there's excess traffic on here, on this section of town. A lot of parents drive. Now, okay, you've talked many times about residential property sales in Stratfield. It's a young family community, right? And Saturday morning, or Sundays during open houses, and you see open house signs at the Stratfield Market parking lot. I mean, and that's what people see. They see an empty, decrepit building there for years. That is killing these family home values in that neighborhood. Now, if we have a young family coming in and saying, this is your dry cleaner, your bagel store, your daycare center, and of course 2 blocks away is your school, you have a gas station, you have a bank, and you're living over here, I think that is a tremendous benefit to this community that outweighs the traffic situation. And I know there's a big traffic situation on Fairfield Woods Road. I mean, I've waited forever at Morehouse and Fairfield Woods, or at the light at Stratfield Road. I know what it's like, and I would have really liked to see a traffic study done when Yonuncra School was open. I know it was done in, school was already closed the second week of June, but, you know, that's just another school, and we all know what, we live in that area of town, we know what that area of town is like. This, you know, it's not a perfect application, it's not, but this is a benefit and to the people of Stratfield, the community, the residents. We have cars there parked all hours of the night. We've had people sleeping in their cars in their parking lot over there at that Stratfield Market that I know we chase people out of. I've done it personally with the police department at 1 o'clock in the morning where I've gotten complaints. To me, this cleans up an area that needs to be cleaned up. It's a day camp center. It will service the, not solely the people of Stratfield, but it will be a service to the people of Stratfield. Yes, we're going to be pulling people up from maybe Easton or Trumbull, but like Mr. Coleman said, that's going to turn over a period of time. People are not going to drive that far and then go all the way back up to the Merritt Parkway, wherever they may have to go to work. To me, I tremendously, wholeheartedly support this application, and I ask all my commissioners to do so. This is something that this community desperately needs and has desperately needed for years. Not perfect, but it's something it desperately needs.
Thank you, Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Barrett?
You can go, okay. I'll try to be quick. I don't want to be redundant with what was said already. I very much came into this, similar thoughts to Commissioner Kennelly, but also some of the ones that were shared by Commissioner Coleman and Alessi. Yeah, when we talk about the property, it's been vacant for 7.5 years. It's been going on 7 years since the denial. I drive by there every day, and I wonder if we did the right thing. I was actually on the commission, one of the 4 votes to deny the previous application. If I knew then that it was going to be vacant for 7 years, I'm not sure I would have made the same decision right now. So that being said, what the decision that did show is that this is a district where we have with all our business districts, but especially this one, we have a tremendous amount of discretion written into our regulations. So I have to evaluate this, you know, based on our regulations, as we always do, but I would just point out that there's some significant wording in that district. First of all, I agree with what was said. It is a permitted use. It's expressly permitted. No issue there. The previous application was a question about some of the products, but day nurseries are permitted use. The purpose of the district is to provide neighborhoods with needed and desirable goods and services, I'm paraphrasing some of it, that manage not detrimental to the surrounding areas, and the use shall be primarily serve the local neighborhoods. You see, there's a lot of subjective terms there. Primarily, not detrimental. We make those decisions. We make those calls based on the evidence, and we have that, and we have that discretion here. So I have to ask myself, would the people of the neighborhood benefit by a child care center? And I would say yes. I mean, there was evidence to that. I think we all know, Commissioner Coleman said that very well. People in Stratfield could use a child care facility, absolutely. The word primarily, I don't know that there's enough evidence to make that call yes or no. I think that's subjective. I think I can't say for sure that, oh, people are going to come from Trumbull here. It's going to be mainly people from Trumbull. I don't really think so. So I'm going to lean on the side that it would benefit the neighborhood. It would meet the purpose of the district. That's where I'm on that. My reservations with the application are similar to Mr. Kennelly's. First of all, traffic. The applicant's own traffic report does show a degradation in service. Again, this is something where we have discretion to determine what is undue traffic. Each of us that's been on the commission a while has heard about 20 traffic reports a year. Commissioner Kennelly, you're up to about probably 140 traffic reports. So we are, we're pretty proficient as far as reading.
It's all insignificant.
Right, and making these calls. I'd say there is a degradation in service. No matter what, it was pointed out to, no matter what goes in there is going to cause an increase in traffic there. I was impressed by even showing the Trumbull facility that the traffic does flow over time during the day. It's spread throughout the day, the traffic generation. There is a lot in the morning, a lot at the end of the day, but it is spread throughout the day. And they know this from their experience, and that is presented. As far as the parking, I was a little concerned, but again, this is something that the applicant is showing by their experience. I don't know enough to say that it's inadequate. To me, it's 22 for staff, 10 for the public. on the surface, seems light, but again, they've operated these facilities before, and we'd have to, really, there's no evidence that it wouldn't, take them at their assertion that it would be adequate. And the other one is about the left-hand turn. That was a good point. I think Commissioner Calabrese made with it. He made that point during the application. I was concerned about that too, but Commissioner Alessi makes a good point too. I make left-hand turns across that line all the time on that street too. There are other parking lots which calls for you to do that. So whether it's the bank or the convenience store. So I'm leaning to support this, but I look forward to what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Okay, we'll jump in here. Occupancy at this space is a long time coming. This building's been in a state of blight in the Stratfield neighborhood for almost a decade. As you guys have heard, 7.5 years, as we all know, despite the minimal efforts made by the owner to maintain that building. With that being said, I feel the neighbors at this point are so distraught and desperate for anything at this point to go in that space that they'll settle for the first thing that comes along. So here we are. We have an application for a child care facility before us. I personally think this is an awful location for this type of facility, given the traffic congestion. I'm concerned someone's going to get injured or worse through that intersection. I'm certainly not a traffic expert, and I made clear at the public hearing that I don't think the current proposal for the flow of traffic will work. However, the expert assured us that this is the best option available for this site. I know traffic's a concern for many of the residents, as it is for me. Like some of the other commissioners, I travel that route every day going to work. I live in the Stratfield neighborhood. I know firsthand how long you can sit at that light or at the stop sign on Fairfield Woods Road, either direction for the most part. Will this facility add to that congestion? There's no doubt about it. It's going to. Will it add more congestion than, say, a market or some other retail facility that would go in there? Well, that I don't know. I don't know that for sure. But I do think it will generate less trips overall than a market would. Is this the best option for the site? Again, in my opinion, I don't think it is. But I do give the applicant a lot of credit with the way they went about their application. They did it the right way, in my opinion. They met with the neighbors. They met with the local neighborhood association. They tried to get as much feedback as they could before filing this application. In the end, they're willing to fix up a building that sat vacant for 7.5 years, and it's been in disrepair. Based on the feedback that I've heard at the public hearing and from people who've expressed their opinions, there's overwhelming support for this application. Therefore, since I serve on this commission, as do the rest of the commissioners, to represent our residents of the town of Fairfield, I'm going to support this application, though I personally do not like it.
Thank you, Commissioner Calabrese. Commissioner Jacobson.
I share the traffic concerns of the fellow commissioners. I also appreciate very much how the applicant reached out to the neighbors and did everything they could to make them, content. I also like the rain garden they put in. I'm worried about the left-hand turn, but again, Commissioner Alessi made a good point where there are other left-hand turns. I will support this application, and I concur with my fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. Anyone else? Well, my comments are, I won't repeat a lot of what has been said. I echo some of the concerns. I don't agree necessarily with all of them as some of them have been stated in the extreme. I'll just point out a couple of things that were significant to me. I think, Commissioner Calabrese, you said it really eloquently about the manner in which the applicant approached the whole project. The overwhelming support that we heard. The neighbors want this, and that answers your question, Commissioner Barrett, as to whether it is for the good of the neighborhood. They answered the question to meet the regulations. The difference here, Commissioner Keneally, is with the medical facility is that was a zone change. The size of the building was not didn't meet our regulations. They were looking to put in a facility that was much larger, and we're trying to do something that was, I think, not consistent with the neighborhood design district. This meets our regulations. It is an expressly permitted use. The neighbors have come out firmly in support. And I don't think it is setting a precedent to allow an application that meets the regulations. With the medical facility, we exercised our discretion to deny the zone change that was necessary for them to put in a facility that would have significantly attracted a regional draw. So I think all these applications stand on their own 2 feet, and you know, I would reject an attempt by a future applicant to point to this as somehow deviating from that. So I don't think that we're making any findings that would provide support for such an argument. So I will be supporting this application for all the reasons that we've discussed, and I think that we've made a sufficient record for each of the findings that have been that are required under the regulations. So I won't belabor the record with that. Anybody else have any more comments or questions?
One, do we have to make any finding? There was one space that they wanted to have closer to the street. Do we have to make a finding on that? It was 7 feet instead of 10?
Yeah, you have discretion in allowing, if you feel the landscaping plan addresses, I mean, the requirement for the setback is for buffering. So if you feel that their landscaping proposed addresses that concern, then you would be able to allow for reduction in the setback for the parking space.
Okay.
One last. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Commissioner Canal.
Thank you. Only because I'm the one kind of foot dragging here rather than embracing it. I just want to, and I think I will support this, but I do think it's worth noting that, you know, a couple of things are based on assumptions that I hope do pan out. The assumption that over time the makeup of Child World Academy does move much more of a direction of Fairfield residents taking advantage. I hope that is the case. The assumption that making a left-hand turn into the bank is not going to be as deleterious as making a left-hand turn across a double yellow line when you have many young, when you have these large number of young parents of these young children going in there. Not many people are going to the bank these days, but there's going to be every day, there's going to be a good number of folks who are going to be making a left-hand turn across a double yellow line southbound there, and there are also going to be employees looking to park. So that those assumptions that these will be akin to other left-hand turns and that there will be turnover, I hope do pan out. And the final thing I'd say is this assumption that everyone in our neighborhood is wildly for it. I live in that neighborhood, and I would say that I think that the actual feeling about it, however this is written about, is wild slam dunk or whatever. Many people I talk with right on my block who were involved in the fight on the original market are still to this day quite conflicted. There was not a huge turnout in September. This was done over the holiday weekend in September. So there are, I'm just pleased that there is indeed a 5-year certification process that we can come back and revisit this. At least there is that if it turns out that some of these assumptions don't pan out, because I'm going to go along and support it too.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. So we have a motion to approve. We need to add to that the bond requirement.
Yeah, the bond is self-evident, we usually require, but you can include that the same
Okay.
landscaping would be included in the bond figure that will come up for this site. Also, along with what Mr. Barrett had mentioned, you would also approve, if you remember, there was an additional adjustment to the plan addressing that parking space, and the reason for its adjustment was to allow for a greater buffer to an adjacent
Right.
residential unit. So you would also make as a condition of your approval that you would permit that additional buffer.
For the record, I'll accept both conditions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And seconded by Commissioner Alessi. So the motion has been amended to for approval with the conditions as articulated by Mr. Devanchuk. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? No? Are we ready to vote? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? The item, as moved, passes unanimously. All right. So that concludes our executive session. We're going to go to a public hearing. We have 2 items on the agenda for the public. We have 464 Pine Creek Avenue, which will go first, and 1073 North Benson Road. We'll take a short break to reconfigure. This is the public hearing of our February 11th meeting. We have two items on the agenda. The first is 464 Pine Creek Avenue, the special exception in coastal site plan application of Round Hill Associates pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in a floodplain district. For members of the public who are here, the applicant will have its presentation. Then we will go to public comment. Anyone here is entitled to speak on behalf in support of or opposition to the application. Feel free to make any comments, ask any questions. Just direct your comments to the commission. We'll try to get answers from the applicant in their rebuttal. The applicant will have the rebuttal and the last word, and then the hearing will be closed. So with that, Mr. Fallon, you ready to proceed?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm representing the applicant this evening. With regard to this application, as the Chair indicates, there's two real components to this application. One is pursuant to Section 23.6 of the regulations, approval to construct a single-family residence at 464 Pine Creek Avenue, property being located in the floodplain district. And the second application, portion of the application, is your CAM approval. The presentation that we're going to offer you tonight momentarily is we're going to have our architect, Mr. Mark Donnelly, give you a brief overview of the architectural design of the house. Bill Kenny is going to review with you the report that he submitted with regard to the consistency of our proposal with the goals and policies of the CAM statute, and he will also review a very extensive landscaping plan that he developed with and in conjunction with Mr. Biankowski. And then we'll have Mike Bertula from the Huntington speak to the site engineering and consistency of our proposal with the standards established under Section 23.6 and 27.4 of your regulations as pertains to single-family residences in this district. A few words preliminarily. First of all, we thank Mr. Biankowski for all of his hard work on the application. It's been a collaborative approach with he and Mr. Kenny and the applicant. We appreciate the favorable recommendation in his CAM report of January 24. I wanted to just let the Commission know that we were aware at the time my client is the contract purchaser of this property. We noted the same considerations he had before he probably saw it with regard to some of the debris around the perimeter of the property that he alludes to in his report, as any good contract purchaser would do. We thoroughly investigated that. We did that through both historical reference. The owner of the property, Mrs. Loper, who's lived on the property for 4 or 5 decades, I guess, has owned it, acquainted us with the background there. We made our own investigation. What we were able to determine is that there is some construction, concrete type debris that at some point in time, this property has been vacant property for a very long time, ended up there as Mr. Biankowski describes it. We also noted a boat of some kind, a small pleasure type boat that at some point must have become whatever there and has sort of disintegrated. To make a long story short, we just want to let you know that we have investigated that. We thoroughly intend to do the test borings that Mr. Biankowski suggests, even if he hadn't suggested them before we closed title on this property. Our contract has all the standard protections relative to environmental. We've already conducted a Phase 1 report, but long-windedly, we are in total agreement with Mr. Biankowski's recommendation in his CAM report that we do those series of test borings because we're going to do it anyway before we purchase the property. And I just wanted to make that clear. Let me talk a little bit about the property. It's obviously located in the floodplain district. As you know, the standards for residential development that Section 23, the floodplain district, applies are those that are found in the R3 zone. So you have to, for compliance with the single-family home application in the floodplain, look to the regulations that are established in the R3 zone. In that regard, as the commissioners are aware, the minimum lot area required for the R3 zone, and therefore in the floodplain district, is 14,000 square feet. This parcel is almost 6 times that, 5 times that. It's 64,000 36 square feet. And even when you take out the areas subject to, computation to compute net area, we still come up with a net lot area of 47,619 square feet. So it's a very oversized lot for purposes of the district that we're in. It obviously is an approved subdivision lot. It was subdivided, I think, in the early 1990s. It's taxable, it's taxed as a buildable lot, and what we propose to do, as you'll hear in a minute, is simply address the construction of a single-family home there. With regard to the home itself, I hope you'll agree, as we think, that it's very attractively and sensitively designed by Mark Donnelly, who I'll introduce in a second. We were careful here with height. The overall height of this structure is 31 feet 2 inches. That's obviously less than is allowed under the R3 zone standards, which allows 40 feet. And it's actually less than many houses now are being constructed in the near proximity in the Beach District because of the allowance that the Beach District regulations make under your recent amendments for additional height when you're dealing with elevation issues. Similarly, with regard to the total floor area, the application correctly lists that the gross floor area of this structure is 6,420 square feet. I would just want to point out, for purposes of context, that 776 square feet of that is garage, and 898 square feet of that is attic. So really, the total floor area on a square footage basis, when you take out those areas, is 4,764 square feet. Because of the size of the lot, and because of the house as it is proposed, again, the coverage regulation that applies here for this house is 15%. This house, as you can see from the zoning grid, will have coverage of 8.1%, so just over half of what is allowed in the district. The FAR, floor area ratio requirement, is 30%. This house's FAR will be 15.1%, or again, just above more than half. Mr. Alessi. Based on the 6412. Thank you very much. Yes, based on the 6412. So I just want to say that because I think the lot is large, but the house, I think, fits very well on the lot, and it was our goal to come up with a house that would do that, and of course, as importantly, meet the standards of the CAM statute and your own regulations. And so in that regard, let me call on Mr. Donnelly, who will just briefly give you an overview of the architectural exterior elevations, and then we'll proceed to Mr. Kenny and to Mr. Bertula. And this is just, I'm handing out just an elevation to give you some sense of design. And Mark, you go ahead.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Mark Donnelly. I'm a registered architect. My offices are at 75 Lounsbury Road in Fairfield. In designing this house, I tried to take into account the nature of a seacoast house and some of the historical precedent of grand gambrel roofs and vernacular pitches and such bays and things like that that take advantage of the views, but also create a good-looking house that will be viewed, obviously, by people from across the creek and everywhere else. In particular, I was concerned about articulating the mass so that it wasn't extremely tall. And as John pointed out, we were able to get a house that has a relatively low profile in terms of its average height. And the half story on the top, which we're allowed to have in this zone, complies as a half story underneath a steeply pitched roof to, of course, try to keep consistent with structures that are much older in nature and design. The house is fully FEMA compliant. Its first floor is at elevation 14. We're required to be at 12 in this zone. The bottom of the lowest structural member will be at 13, and there'll be flood openings underneath. It's a shingle-style house with a stone veneer around the base with flood openings in it. And as John mentioned, part of the area is a garage, which is kind of a rarity in the beach area. and will allow for cars to be concealed as opposed to parked in the landscape. And that's about it. You have it before you.
Another question, look at the plans, you have the elevator going to the attic, but we're showing a 9-foot ceiling in the attic?
That's correct.
So at some point, we just say, finish the attic?
The area over the main part of the house is finished.
It is finished?
Yes, it is, and it qualifies as a half-story.
Okay, and there was another section over the garage?
Yeah, that is not accessible. That will just be unfinished storage and probably have a mechanical unit in it with a pull-down hatch. That has much lower head height in that area. And no windows or dormers or anything. It's just attic. But that area included with the main area over the house, those two areas, everything that's over 7 feet complies as a half-story.
And are included in those calculations.
And are included in the calculations.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Donnelly will be in attendance if anybody else has any other questions. Next, I'd like to call on William Kenny. Bill actually prepared the CAM report that we submitted with this application. And in addition to that, and Bill, you can come forward. I'm going to do my Vanna White again. This is the landscaping plan. And again, this is a landscaping plan that we're very proud of, obviously. It's one that, again, is the product of Bill's talents and also a good deal of input, I think, and helpful positive input from your staff in looking into the house. And so, Bill?
Good evening. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates here in Fairfield. I am a registered landscape architect, soil scientist, and a wetland scientist. I was retained to help with this project in several ways. First, to document the existing conditions on the property and adjacent to the property with regard to coastal resources. I was responsible for mapping the tidal wetlands that are along the perimeter of the property and identifying the other coastal resources, which the primary resources are tidal wetlands and watercourses. On the south side of the property, you have Pine Creek, and on the north side, you have another tidal wetland and creek system that is connected by a 48-inch pipe that's located in the northeast corner of the property. And water flows from Pine Creek into this back marsh system there. In addition, on the property is the coastal hazard area, the FEMA flood zone, and those are the primary resources. The development includes that the construction of a single-family house. No improvements are proposed within critical coastal resources. No improvements are within tidal wetlands or the tidal watercourse. And the structure is relatively modest in size. It's situated in an area of the property that has been maintained as an ornamental landscape. There's a fair amount of existing vegetation along the perimeter and upland of the wetlands. There's quite a few trees along the perimeter. What we have focused on is enhancing the planting around the house, the proposed house, and it's entirely native plants that are adapted to the coastal environment and will be a benefit to local wildlife, bird life, and so forth, while also providing an ornamental value to the property owner. Other features included with this plan related to the Coastal Area Management Act include management of stormwater. There are subsurface structures proposed to deal with stormwater quality to ensure water from the roof of the house and the driveway are being controlled and managed and treated before it is discharged off the property. As well, the sanitary, there is a public sanitary hookup for this property, so there's no need for worrying about septic systems or anything like that. And the property will be connected to a public water supply. Lastly, the amount of disturbance for this is relatively small. It's about a few thousand square feet on a relatively flat area of land. So the potential for soil erosion impacts during construction, it's very little potential for that. And so with all those things in combination, it was my conclusion that this development is consistent with the coastal resource and use policies of the state of Connecticut. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to.
Yes, Mr. Kenny, I read your CAM report, and Mr. Biankowski's report is actually dated in January. He had a couple recommendations in there. I just wondered if you could comment on them. One is that some test holes be excavated on the filled portion of the peninsula to determine the structural integrity of the fill. Whether, so you accept that as a condition?
That's why I mentioned it twice in my opening report, yes.
Okay. So you'll accept that. And then the other recommendation, I think, was that the large piles of wood chips would be removed. All that additional material that was dumped into the Untitled Wetlands March would be removed.
It's a good idea.
Those are
Yes, acceptable.
conditions.
I also would mention, which the Commission is probably aware of for the record, that as part of the Coastal Area Management Review overseen by Mr. Biankowski, this matter was referred to the Office of Long Island Sound Program, the state DEEP, and they had no adverse comments. Lastly, I'd like to have Mike Bertula from the Huntington Company just briefly give you an overview with regard to our site engineering and the consistency of the proposal for a single-family residence here in accordance with the standards of your regulations, section 23.6 and 27.4.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Michael Bertula. I'm a licensed professional engineer and surveyor with the Huntington Company here in Fairfield. Most of my points were already pointed out by the previous speakers. This piece of property is probably one of the largest piece, if not the largest piece in this neighborhood. As Attorney Fallon said, it's almost an acre and a half in size. The net area is about 48,000 square feet, which the net area is at least 3.5 times of what the zone requires. As Mr. Kenny said, there's an existing public sewer on the dead-end portion of the road. There's also water service for us for the lot to hook up into. Because of the impervious area of the house and drive, what's required per the engineering department, I chose to use underground stormwater chambers. I did the computations per the town of Fairfield Engineering Department, and there's two groups of plastic chambers proposed underground. It's my opinion that the house is FEMA compliant, as Mark Donnelly, the architect, pointed out. The property has from the FEMA maps, there's three flood zones on our property. The northerly part is FEMA zone AE13. The mid portion is flood zone AE12, and the southerly part easterly part is a VE15. So the house, the construction is proposed within the flood zone AE12, and again, as Mr. Donnelly pointed out, the house is elevated to conform to FEMA standards, and also the standards set forth in your subdivision regulations. I stopped in to see Laura Pooley at the engineering department here in the town of Fairfield, reviewed briefly my plan, and also took a look at her pictures and reports from Hurricane Sandy back in late October of 2012. She showed me the evidence that she's collected and pointed out that this particular piece of property was never flooded during Hurricane Sandy. Again, it's my opinion that it complies with your subdivision regulations and also complies with all FEMA standards.
Thank you, Michael. We'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have. We think a sensitive application, both environmentally and in accordance with the zoning standards as far as the provisions of the R3 zone as they apply here. We're excited about the landscaping plan. We're pleased we received an affirmative report subject to the conditions that Commissioner Barrett's mentioned, which we have no objection to from staff and also the DEP, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have about the proposal that we might not have covered in our presentation.
Thank you, Attorney Fallon. Does anyone have any questions? Very good. Thank you. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this application? Going once? Going twice? All right.
Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, very good. I will close the public hearing on this application.
Yeah. This is a nice house, though.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. Very nice. It does fit in with the landscape, too. It does, you know, it's nice.
I think they're all gonna go at this time, there's no public here.
And then we have one more? That's it?
The next item on our agenda is 1073 North Benson Road, special acceptance application of Fairfield University for additions and alterations to an existing athletic building in conjunction with previously approved athletic field and stadium improvements as shown on plans entitled Fairfield University Sports Medicine Center, dated January 9, 2013, prepared by Wiles Architects in a AA zone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm John Fallon. I'm here tonight representing proudly Fairfield University. With me is Mr. David Fasanelli, our Associate Vice President for Facilities Management, and our Senior Project Manager at the University, Mr. Kurt Krasinski. This application is kind of simple, and it's an outgrowth, as the agenda indicates, of something you approved in 2012. What it is we're seeking approval of a 1,560 square foot addition to the Walsh Athletic Complex, for purposes of which is to provide a new location for our sports medicine suite at the university. We already have a sports medicine suite, as I'm going to ask Mr. Fasanelli to kind of give you an overview, and it's of approximately the same size, 1,322 square feet. He'll tell you what the current and the proposed facility does and why it's very important to our student athletes. But the reason we're here is when you approved the improvements to Alumni Field a year or so ago, part of that building program that you approved involved moving the existing field approximately 10 feet to the south and 30 feet to the east. That was important as a component of the application because that allowed us to address what we call a certain pedestrian pinch point in the layout of the current field that really caused congestion, sometimes addressed a safety problem for us, and just overall was not a very positive thing for the game day experience for our fans. So the relocation of that field, as everyone, University Commission, felt was a good idea, is basically just conflicting with the location of the existing training wing. And to say that much better and to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to ask Mr. Fasanelli to just kind of come forward and give you that brief overview so you know what we're replacing with what. Huh? Oh, they took all the podiums. You mean those weren't ours?
Thank you, John.
I said I'd be Vanaway, and
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is David Fasanelli. I'm Associate Vice President for Facilities at Fairfield University. Kurt Krasinski will be handing out 11 by 17 copies.
this is the same, right?
It's the same as what
Then I
What
will...
we're getting is a copy of that?
Correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Terrific.
So you don't have to put your glasses on to see it,
Thank you.
as I would need.
Sure.
I won't cover the same territory that John covered. I think he very lucidly made his points about why we need to move the field to the south under the application that's already approved. This plan shows both what we currently have in the sports medicine suite in this dotted outline, proceeding to the north, such that when we relocate the field, it would actually be in the footprint of the playing surface. And highlighted, what we've shown here in yellow, is the proposed new building. In the ideal world, I'd grab this building and just twist it over, but that's not that easy to do. We considered all of our options in terms of where we could relocate this, and it was clear that no matter where we put it on the building, it would involve a new wing or new construction. This location that we have placed it in is critical, and as John mentioned, it's the sports therapy suite, which is this area that has tables and machines, but also the sports therapy suite extends into the building with a significant investment in hydrotherapy tubs. So whatever we did, we had to have proximity to the existing hydrotherapy areas. Ultimately, we came to the conclusion, we looked at rotating it backwards. There was a transformer in the way. We ultimately decided to rotate it this way because it maintains those key proximities to the sports medicine equipment, but it also remains close to the field and adjacent to the field. And clearly the concept of sports medicine is to address injuries of athletes, among other things, on the field. So being able to be in this location and look out on the existing field was a key consideration. To orient you also, for those of you who are familiar with the campus, we've given you an elevation or a rendering of the existing Walsh Athletic Complex. As John mentioned too, essentially the similar square footage, going from 1,322 square feet to 1,560. Much of that square footage addresses egress from the building. This corridor, which is another condition we needed to deal with, has to be maintained for egress of the building. And this plan, the full set of plans, will maintain egress by having a new corridor that runs alongside. So part of our additional square footage was not necessarily an increase in program, but dealing with corridor spaces and that sort of thing.
The rendering that's in the picture, that is the proposed new building? That's a rendering of the proposal?
The rendering shows both the existing two-story building.
Right.
And to orient you here, the two-story portion is here.
Yep.
And the addition on the front, which is essentially a glass box.
And then that's the field right adjacent.
That's correct. That is the field out here. And within this space, it's pretty much an open space inside with tables, and there's no bathrooms or equipment or that kind of stuff in there.
Just want to, this is the building next to Alumni Field?
Correct.
Okay.
And, but yeah, the Walsh Athletic Complex. The,
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I guess it's hard to talk from here, I don't want to open, but how far is the proposed building from the actual playing field? I mean, the existing building would have been conflicted with it, right? You know, just
we are maintaining,
The overall Walsh building?
yeah, the new building, that,
Yeah,
like,
he's talking about
yellow
this-
part here, how far is that from the field?
about 20 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say about 20 feet.
Because we are going to be maintaining a walkway of about 10 feet inside the fence and a walkway of about 10 feet outside of the fence from
Is
the
there a
stadium.
fence around the field?
Yes.
There will be when
Yep.
we do the new stadium.
As approved, yeah. Other questions? Before I don't want to...
Anyone?
We're using high impact glass, and the existing field calls for netting to protect it. we don't want to injure any more people once they're inside the building, you know, but it's a good consideration. We thought about that one also. One of our other hardships that we're wrestling with is the HVAC equipment for the entire first floor sits on top of this roof. So if we completely eliminated it, we would need, and ties in to this corridor, we would need to find another place to put that equipment.
And so the facade there is designed to hide the mechanicals on the roof of the building?
Yeah, the parapet extends off.
In those areas that are shown as standard glass. We did, in addition to the notification letters that went out, we did an outreach as well, as we always do with our neighbors, particularly those in the College Park area, including some, I believe everyone that was noticed also received a letter from us showing this plan and noting that it really doesn't modify the bigger project, which took a little bit more involvement to getting approved.
And it's basically a like-kind exchange on the square footage.
I will note that although there is additional square footage, the additional square footage is over areas that are all currently impervious parking lot, paved areas.
Thank you, David. Any other questions?
All right.
I think Mr. Frasnelli covered anything I could say in conclusion, so unless you have any other questions, we're pleased again to thank you for your attention.
Very good. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard on this application? That's an echo. That's supposed to be an echo, reflecting that there's nobody here, apart from young Barretts. Would you like to come speak? You're good? You sure? Yes.
Oh, yes, the lawyer
No, but he will get his merit badge. All right, very good.
Thank you all very much.
There's no one here. You have no rebuttal. Thank you. The hearing is closed. And that concludes our hearing. Meeting adjourned.
Good job.